What up, Lantern?
What's up?
Well, I figured today we'd get down and talk a little bit about living soil and the soil food web and get people a little bit bigger picture on that topic there. What do you think?
Let's do it.
We also happen to have awesome guests here, Chad Westport, so we'll be able to toss ideas back and forth and get people a little bit of knowledge on the living soil and the soil food web. So let's get it. What up, Chad? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing me on with such a great subject. Like this is right up my alley from a learning perspective. So I appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem. It's always it's always a great time having you for a chat, whether it's on Future Cannabis Project, your channel, or just a chat in general. So
Yeah,
it's an honor having you on here again,
I agree, man. Always good chats with you, and it's nice to toss in the X Factor too.
right?
Yep. Got the X Factor Jake over here.
Heck
Lantern.
yeah.
He'll definitely throw some stuff in there, that's for sure.
I'll try.
So the main thing I want to cover in this chat basically is the bigger picture of living soil and why a lot of organic growers in the natural growing sphere try to tell people to grow on a much larger pot than they're used to, and to make that baby make sense for newcomers to the organic growing. So that I think that's the main goal for tonight.
And that's a great goal, great goal, and something that I've recently experienced myself. Stepped up my pot size because again, there's kind of a size limit that people suggest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I guess we'll get right into it. The main reason people are suggesting larger pots and larger pot sizes is because of the soil food web. Now, the soil food web is nothing more than a large ecosystem comprised of many different ecosystems that feed on each other and produce different products that your plant feeds on. Now, it all starts with the plants releasing the exudates and getting the whole process started. And the bigger the pot, the more of these ecosystems and diverse um, populations you can have that can do the nutrient cycling and be able to feed your plant.
So, Goblin, when you say these plants are when you say these plants are releasing exudates, what does that mean?
Well, that's a really good question. During the day, the plants are using the sunlight to create sugars, glucoses, in combination with using the carbon dioxide. And during the day, they'll store up those glucoses in their leaf tissues. And at night, they'll send a lot of those glucoses out through their roots, those are called exudates. And a lot of different microorganisms will come by to eat those exudates and bring nutrients to the plant in which the plant's requiring.
Awesome.
So, like, the biggest factor here is not having to know all the different microorganisms, the fungi, and even microarthropods and a little bit larger things that you can actually see without a microscope. The main thing you need to know is the larger your soil or the pot that you have, the bigger reservoir you have, and the more nutrients that are technically there and ready for your plant to be consuming them.
And yeah, I've always heard, it referenced as your battery. That's
Oh,
something,
absolutely.
the different size batteries, and to me that kind of made sense. You don't want it running out towards the end, but from coming from a synthetic system where I can just add whatever I need at any time, battery didn't really click in that world, but it makes sense in the organic kind of soil food web world.
Yeah, I guess if you're still using a soil media, you're just recharging your battery. You had like a supercharged battery where you were just charging it up all the time.
Yeah, I guess that could apply now that it's in that perspective. Absolutely. It's just rechargeable. It's
Right?
from the
Yeah.
future.
Straight up.
So, like, to get a little bit more into the soil food web, there's bacteria and fungi are the biggest players in the soil food web, especially when it comes to in relation to your plants. And that's why a lot of organic growers and whatnot will tell you to really try to filter your water and make sure there's not chlorine or chloramines or using pesticides that will actually harm the beneficial life in your soil, because this is the thing that's actually feeding your plants, and what actually builds your soil is the bacteria and the fungi. And if you're harming the fungi, especially the fungi, it's really going to dampen your plant's growth, because the fungi is what's able to convert the potassium and the potash for fruiting plants. So if you're going to want nice healthy fruits, you're going to want a nice healthy soil system that contains lots of natural fungi and natural diverse fungi. And the another thing that's kind of important about the soil food web is that the most of the bacteria that lives in the soil food web is there for nitrogen cycling, one, and then two, it actually creates a slime-like substance that actually holds the soil together as more of an aggregate than a bunch of fine particulates of rock, sand, silt, and clay. So it actually like holds the soil together.
Which you do hear a lot about is just soil structure and the ability for air and oxygen to exist and the roots to thrive, and that has a lot to do with it. And I think even worms too. Everything is kind of aerating the soil as it moves around, so that is serving its purpose in its hunt for food as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's another great point. Like the worms love to build channels in soil, creating air and water pathways to get water deep down into the soil near the roots that are technically the water roots that like to suck up a lot of the water. They like to go a little bit deeper than the feeder roots that stay closer to the surface, feeding on the decaying matter that's usually on the surface of the soil. Uh, so, yeah, worms are another key big benefit to a soil food web or growing in soil medium in general. They'll help stave off different bacteria and viruses from your plants, especially Pythium, a root rot. Worms help keep those away by creating the different bacteria that are in their gut and leaving those behind in their castings. So they're
It
a
always
huge
has
part.
something to do with something eating something and pooping it out.
That's
Like that. It
exactly
always comes down to that.
that's exactly what the soil food web is trying to teach people, is that it's always about something eating something and pooping it out, and then it continuing to break down. Uh,
And there is, I mean, there is a certain extent, as an indoor gardener, that we have to draw the line. Like obviously the bird. I hope
oh
nobody
yeah.
has birds in their indoor areas, but there's a lot of it, like the exudates and the microbes that feed off it that are so small that we can't see it. It's kind of hard to,
To quantify.
maybe, yeah, to quantify, maybe to kind of believe, other than start doing it and seeing the results. And I, for one, I like to check my roots after every run is done.
Oh,
That can
absolutely.
tell me a lot as well about what was going on underneath the surface there.
Yeah, like what went right, what went wrong,
The
what
color
did I
of the
do different?
roots, the smell of the roots,
Density.
the
Mhm.
density, and another good key indicator that you have good life in your soil is that if you can actually see the fungi on the surface of the soil. If you can see fungal ropes and hyphae on the surface of your soil, you know you have a bunch of biology in that soil.
Well, and this is, I mean, scary for somebody who doesn't know what it is, because you always hear about mold and fungus in the flowers and how it's bad and it will ruin your crop. And you do a lot of things to control
Yeah.
your environment to avoid it. So the second somebody sees mold or fungus on their soil, natural reaction is to, destroy. Do you have a good picture in there of maybe what that would look like? Because again,
Yeah, this
That
right
would
here,
knowing
that's
is knowing.
healthy. As long as it's that color and that
if it's
ropey.
nice and white and ropey
Yeah.
like that, or even sometimes it'll be fuzzy, almost
Okay. What
like a
about like
puffy
green?
fuzz. Green isn't necessarily too bad. That's a trichoderma, and technically that's bad for humans to eat, but it's really great for your soil as long as it's not too much.
Right.
If you have a lot of trichoderma in your soil, it can take over, and nature's all about balance. And
Yeah.
if it's too much, it'll throw other microorganisms off, and it won't work
Yeah,
as
I'd
well.
say if you're seeing anything more than like 10% trichoderma on the top of your soil, maybe there's something to be worried about.
Right. And usually, that just comes about from a over wet soil surface. So maybe something there can be used to correct that
Yeah,
issue and control the other issue. But
Yeah, like
over
it could
wet
have been
soil
just
surface.
using too much water when you were remixing a batch of soil is often
hmm,
the case, and then you go put that in your storage bin, and if it's not breathable enough, it's going to
yeah.
remain too moist, and you might get a little bit too much of the bad fungi.
And then another case that can happen is somebody may top dress a little too aggressively, and they won't be able to mix it in nearly enough into the top soil, the
Hmm.
surface of the soil, and some of those amendments will start breaking down and attracting like trichoderma and other things. So that's why it's super important when you go to top dress that one, if you do have a mulch layer, that's awesome, like a straw or anything else that you really use for a mulch layer. Pull that back and make sure that you can work those amendments into the top layer.
Now, I've kind of heard, or I'm familiar with, just in traditional farming, big scale, no-till practices, and a
Hmm.
lot of that is you don't want to disturb the fungal networks. If I see stuff like this growing on my surface, but I'm also top dressing and I want to kind of scratch that in, uh, is it doing more harm than good scratching that in, or would I be better off watering and
No,
replacing the mulch?
it'll actually, you will damage some of the fungi, but most of the fungi is living beneath the surface of the soil. And just because it's starting to come to the surface, you have really healthy
Okay.
fungi. Um,
Okay.
so that if you damage a little bit of it while top dressing, it won't be that big of a deal because the fungi
Yeah,
will immediately go right to work on those amendments that you
and
just
you
put
can see
down
this work really
and
easily in like mycology
proliferate.
jars too, because you'll see the mycelium growing in one certain portion of the jar. Let's say you want to fruit another jar, I'm sorry, inoculate another jar with that mycelium. You can just take a tiny piece of it, put it in the next sterilized jar, and it'll colonize that entire jar, even if it was just one or two pebbles
Wow.
that had that fungus on it.
Nice.
So yeah, disturbing it a little bit doesn't harm it too much. More disturbing it with chemicals or
Mhm.
excess salts, and that can be organic salts or synthetic salts, or just salt in general. If you have hard water and it's a little salty, uh, it can harm the beneficials as well. So
Yeah,
the
hard
only
water is also dangerous because it once it if it gets too bad, it'll block your roots up, which will then cause the buildup of salts in any system of growing.
And when you guys are saying hard water, how would I know? Is that detectable in the ppm if you're looking at the
Mhm.
ppm of your
The
water?
ppm or
Yeah,
It's going to be really
TDS meter.
high.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you go to your tap and you pour a glass of water off your tap and put your TDS meter or ppm meter in there, and you're getting like 200, 300, or 400, you got
Hard.
relatively hard
Okay.
water.
Okay, good deal. Because that's, yeah, it's an easy reference. And TDS, total dissolved solids. So yeah, that's a good way to know, because a lot of people, unless you pay attention and you have to scrub your shower often, they
Hmm.
don't know whether,
Yep.
or they sometimes don't think about hard or soft water. So yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
that's
when,
like you
like,
said, that's a great
yeah.
way to know too. If you're seeing that in your shower and your shower head's getting plugged up all the time, like you've got hard water. There's your sign right there.
And then now, like, I guess ways to address the hard water would be, the most dramatic way would be is to get an RO water system, an RO
Mhm.
water filter, and that will filter everything out, and you'll end up with 0 ppm water, which is,
Or you could get a whole house water softener system,
or you can get a whole
so
house water
Right.
softener
everything
system.
coming in is soft.
Right. Well, and that's excuse me. It's different than pH though, because a lot of people, or organic systems, will the microbes will help buffer that, so it's not
Hmm.
necessarily a concern. That's why I just kind of bring it up, because sometimes people might just be, taking the tap and putting it in because they're like, well, I don't need to pH it. I don't need to measure any nutrients into it. I'm just water A to B. So
Mhm.
And that's also like a good point to bring up as well, because a living soil will buffer a lot of the pH and a lot of the different problems that different water can bring. But if you keep using hard water and like radically changed pH, like if you have 9 or so pH out of your tap and you're just pouring that on your living soil, it will work. But over time, the buffer that soil has built up and the different amendments that you've used to build it, like oyster shell powder or dolomite lime or any of these pH buffering amendments, will get worn out because you used, uh, you know, the pH that was so out of balance that it had to work harder and harder to get it in the correct balance. So it is much better to use a water that comes out more neutral if you can. Um, a lot of different activated carbon water filters will help with that, and it will help with you know getting it to a more neutral pH without using pH downs, whether that be a synthetic or a vinegar or a citric acid on organic side. Um, that those things help out quite a bit. And then the RO filter, like I said, is the end all be all, but it does waste water, which is why you only do that if you really, really need to.
is there a particular range? Because again, I would think that the microbes, they have their function of doing conversions for us, but if they're focused more on buffering, I'd
Hmm.
imagine that might distract and lessen their effect in other areas.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly it. You nailed it right on the head. They'll have to concentrate more on making sure that they can stay alive than thriving.
Right.
And you want the
Yeah.
microbes to be thriving so they can be nutrient cycling as quick as possible, so your plant can be eating as much as it wants at any time. And that's why, like, even when you're doing top dressing or building your soil, the you'll see recipes, especially online, if you go looking in forums and different
Mhm.
websites that have 30, 40, 50 different amendments, and you'd be like, why is there so many? And they'll use a little bit of each and every single one of those 50 amendments, because the thought pattern is to feed the microbes the most diverse diet possible.
Make them,
Yeah.
yeah, make everything available.
I mean,
Hmm.
we don't make healthy, strong humans out of somebody eating only burgers every day of their life, all day, every day. We give them a diverse palette of foods, some fruits, some vegetables, maybe some meat if you're into that.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's there so that you can build off from a baseline of whatever nutrient you needed at that time.
And that's another really great analogy to use is the human body, because the soil food web uh, relates extremely close to the human body and the microbiome that lives in your gut, and how that can bring you more health and um, stability over time.
And I've seen where people are drinking some of their plant juices that they've made for their own gut health as well.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Heck yeah.
yeah, that's one way that it made a lot of sense to me too. We feel better. Most people feel better when they have a nice meal versus the cheeseburgers. Your body can feel the difference.
Yep.
Plants are presumably, that would correlate to them as well, knowing the difference. Even though you still, hey man, I tried eating cheeseburgers all the time for a long time, and I'm still here. But yeah, definitely a healthier version now.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, and it's not a bad thing to have a treat once in a while. But that's the thing is, we eat a diverse amount of food. Sometimes we'll crave that greasy hamburger that we know is not good for us, and then
Goes
sometimes
through
we'll go
phases.
get a salad and have some fish that's lightly seasoned. That's not a bunch of deep fried fish. Yeah.
Right. So to kind of go back to kick it all off, like the exudates are kicking off the web, but kicking off the exudates is your light, your photosynthesis.
Yep.
Okay.
Photosynthesis and the combination of the light energy that the plant draws in from the sun or your grow light, and CO2. As it draws in the CO2 and the energy from the sun, it creates glucose. And hopefully, if your plant's transpiring well and you have the proper environment and everything, it creates excess glucoses, and those excess glucoses go down and feed the microbiology in particular ways in which brings the exact nutrient that the plant needs to itself.
It's like signaling
Yep.
mycelium
Hmm.
to
It's signaling the
it's
bacteria
literally
and the
talking to
mycelium.
mycelium to say, "Hey, I would really like it if you could go get me these ingredients and
I'd
if you
really
bring it
like some
back,
magnesium and some
I'll eat
calcium.
it."
Right.
And then mycelium says, "Why not? I got nothing else to do." And it runs off and it finds that stuff and it's like, "Here you go."
So in a sense, then, again, the photosynthesis is kind of kicking this off. Would would the soil food web know whether it's on a 24/0 schedule or a 12/12 schedule, or would that make a difference in its overall activity or effectiveness, or is it too short of a duration to really make a difference because the plant's actually working on it?
Maybe
Um,
only in the very top layer of soil, if you don't have it covered up,
the
but
Okay.
soil the soil doesn't really care
yeah,
as long as there's plants in it.
there's something growing that's happy.
I'm actually, now that you answer that, I'm gonna chalk that up to a stoner moment because yeah, light really doesn't penetrate through the soil too well. So
Not
yeah,
too well.
let me retract that one. Light's not mattering, but it's mattering for the photosynthesis, which is
Correct.
sending down the exudates. But in terms of
As
the
long as there's some plants in that soil and those plants get some sunlight or some light during the day, that's all that the soil cares about.
okay. And so, oh yeah, that was my original thought there before I derailed it. Was sometimes in veg, I don't, I'll use lower light for a variety of reasons. One is kind of to slow down the progression because of perpetual growth. So, am I hindering myself there, or am I actually maybe just kind of saving more reserves in the battery for when it gets all the light and all the photosynthesis, and then it can just turbocharge its way through flower?
Yeah, you're just kind of keeping the
You're
battery
saving
more
it.
charged up. You're just saving it. You're being
If you're
more
lo
economical on your
Yeah,
fuel.
if you
Okay.
do lose any, it's so nominal that it'd be hard to track.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
And yeah, that's another great thing is you can turn the lights down in veg and save a bit of electricity and make sure they're not growing too fast so that you can keep your timing just right. And it works out perfect. As long as a good rule of thumb is don't go below half of what you're gonna put it into flour. So like
Right.
if you turn it down to 25% in veg, that might be a little too much turned down because you're gonna put it into like
Yeah.
a 80 100%. you just want to make sure there's somewhere kind of close when you switch it over.
And that is one thing I like about a lot of the LED lights now. They majority have the dimmable, ballasts, as we call them. And I kind of almost, I'll stay maybe 60 in veg. I'll go for 80 for the first part of flower, and then when it's really starting to set in, I give it that 100%. Yeah.
For us, in the veg, we'll turn them up all the way in the very beginning because they're real short, and we don't have to move the lights.
Yeah, we just don't move the light.
We just don't move the lights. We just turn the light up, and then as they grow up, we'll turn it down a little bit, slow it down, make sure they're not getting too tall.
Nice. Yeah, another great way to manipulate it too. You can do it with height, or you can do it with the dimmer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it saves me a little extra work. I don't gotta mess with the straps,
Yeah. Work smart, not hard.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, like if you mix up your soil and you see that some white fuzzy on the top or this on the top of your soil, when you mix that soil up, you did a really good job. The ingredients that you used, the compost that you used, had good fungi in it that proliferated through the whole soil batch that you just made, and you made some really good soil.
Healthy bacterias.
Like, as much as I love healthy bacterias and lactic acid bacteria, which we made a video about, and how you can make your own lactic acid bacteria, and how it's like the workhorse of the bacteria population and does many great things. None of all of this would be possible without the fungi, because the fungi is the mass decomposer and the one that can really feed your plant.
All those things are great, but if you don't have this to start with, then it's not going to work nearly as well.
That's why, like, another great video that we did was the Jadam microbial solution. And if you can make it out to a wild area near you and collect some wild forest mycelium that looks like this, and then use that video to make some Jadam microbial solution, you'll be able to proliferate that fungi throughout all of your soil.
Ton of that stuff around me. Ton. This is actually an interesting area where people travel to find particular mushrooms at 2 times of a year. So yeah, plenty of mycelium near me.
Yeah, so if you go, walking out in the woods and, bring a joint and you go walking out in the woods and you spot some of this, bring a couple Ziploc baggies and put some in there. And then you'll be able to bring it back and make some Jadam microbial solution.
Okay, so it would be you're making a solution. You're not actually taking this, putting it in your Ziploc bag, bringing it back, and then just sprinkling the bag into your pot and call it good. No. Gotta make the solution.
You could, but that'd be really ineffective. You'd be able to, with making the solution, you can make a bunch more of that same fungi, and therefore
you can mass produce that fungi so that
really
you can use it as much as you want. For instance, like you could, if you're using 30 gallon buckets, you can just inoculate both of those with as much as you deem necessary. I mean, you can't really go too hard on the healthy stuff.
Now, how long do you guys keep these around? Is this like a clone that you keep going like bucket to bucket to bucket, and you never really need to go out and get new stuff?
No,
or
like,
is
every season you go out and get new. Every season,
yeah,
because
every season there's going to be new variety of different myceliums and different everything. Like the environment changes every year, and if you can keep that environment, kind of bring a piece of it into your garden
and sync it to what Mother Nature,
what Mother Nature's doing.
Nice.
It doesn't get much more organic than that.
Nice, because I've noticed here, being on the West Coast, last year wasn't bad, but all the fires the years before, that fall, just always like all kinds of new different mushrooms and stuff all over the place. Like the wildfires definitely bring something new to it. So I'm glad you explained it that way. It makes total sense to me now. Something new. And that was something, Green Goblin, we talked about the other day, was just my question of a container indoors doesn't care about your local microorganisms because
Yeah.
it's a bucket indoors. But there are actually real reasons that kind of get around that kind of half-assed question to it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, like
Mhm.
the microbes and whatnot technically don't care, but when you are purchasing microbes from even reputable sources, shout out Recharge, Scotty, and the guys over there in the Duke Rose crew, and or Great White from the Plant Revolution guys, great stuff. But when all this stuff was grown and bred in a lab under perfect conditions, so
Yeah,
it's
and
gonna work really well for you for the first week or so until they start dying off, and then you have to reapply with Recharge or reapply with some more mycos or
the
reapply.
stuff you get direct from nature has been through all stressors, any stressor you can think of, hot, cold, super wind, you name it,
Right.
So you
Yeah.
you
forest fires.
and you inoculate with
Right.
the Exudate microbial solution 1 or 2 times. You don't really have to do it again. You can do it next season.
Hmm.
So it's
Wow.
literally like you do this once a season, and you just apply it once a season,
I'm
and
still
Yep.
make
looking for
sure
my
that
perfect spot to find some of this stuff, but as soon as I do, we will be applying that with a quickness.
we applied it last season.
Yeah, but I want a better spot.
So you're not going to like the local park if you live in a city where everybody is and finding like a piece of dog poop that has the white stuff on it. You're
No,
not using that, right?
no,
No,
no.
no, no.
No.
You want to
Okay.
go to somewhere that's not traveled a bunch. Maybe there is a hiking path, but it's not used a whole bunch. And then you can kind of go off from that path, maybe
Travel
a
40,
football
50
field
feet
away.
off.
Uh, check that area out. Keep kind of scoping areas like that. Definitely bring water. It's going to be, no matter where
It's
you're
gonna
at,
be a hike,
it's gonna be a hike, man.
but not that we condone going to take anything from national parks. But if you're on a walk in a national park and you happen to see a stick that has a little bit of this on there, you just take that little piece. That's all you need.
Okay. Yeah. I do see it on branches a lot, so
Provided your state law allows
good.
that,
Allegedly.
Yeah.
allegedly.
And that's going to be a really great start to really drive home your soil food web, is to get that fungal growth going. That's why like you'll see a lot of worm castings and different composts toting. We have high fungal counts in our compost. We have high fungal counts in our worm castings because that's the thing that really makes the compost effective. There's
Yeah,
lots of
with
nutrients and stuff inside compost all the time, but to really make that compost effective, there has to be living fungi in there as well.
most recently we got this burlap sack of local worm castings,
Mhm.
and when I mixed soil that time, it was like twice the amount of fungal representation on the tops of the soil, and I was like, damn, that's what's up.
And that's another thing too, when you go to maybe decide to build a soil, is like try to source a lot of the things as locally as possible, even if they're in a box and it's a down to earth amendment, but at least it's down the street from you at the local hydro store, and you're not shipping it across the country yet again, because it already got shipped that one time to make it to that store.
Right.
So at least you're not doubling up on the carbon footprint for getting that amendment to your house.
So where do some of the, the little bugs, the creepy crawlies that we can actually visually detect, where do they start to come into the equation of the soil food web?
Well, that's a great question. Uh, most of the time, you're not going to see a lot of the things until it becomes like the actual worms, like red wiggler worms. You'll maybe see microarthropods, which are, to a lot of people, they know them as plug bugs or roly poly olies. Um, and then you might see another one that's called springtails, which are a tiny little white bug. I thought I
Yeah,
had
those
a
those are those are pretty common,
yeah.
and I've actually had those as hitchhikers in bagged soil before,
Mm-hmm.
springtails. So that's something that might pop up, and that kind of visualizes for people that yes, there is a living system going on down in here.
Oh, absolutely. And the springtails aren't really a sign of anything bad. It just means that you have a bunch of organic material breaking down in your soil. And then there might be a little bit extra organic material than absolutely needed. But they actually go through and make sure they eat algae and other things that you don't necessarily like to see in your soil. So they're
Yeah, and
actually a benefit.
with organics, it's fun to err on the side of too much life in the soil. Because if you don't have enough, you're
Yeah.
playing
But
catch up.
the biggest things that you're gonna see are maybe like I was saying, the roly polioles, or a springtail or a worm. There are
Okay.
tiny little soil mites as well that you might be able to see. Some people can't see them. It really depends on how good your eyes are. But
Yeah.
they look like little spider mites, and I don't want people to get scared. They live in the soil. They don't exit the soil, and they're there, policing everything as well.
And in a lot of cases, what I noticed too is they would more so come out and be noticed right as you're watering or right after you water.
Yep.
So that was kind of another indicator of at least a soil dwelling insect versus something that's just going to travel straight to my tops and cause problems. But that is a huge, again, we talked about mycelium and mold on the soil surface. Now we're talking about bugs, all things most growers have always been told are bad and need to be
Hmm.
thrown away, or gotten rid of. So
Yeah, with
yeah,
organics, it's almost like forget everything you've ever known. And then
it,
I'm going to tell
it
you the
really
opposite of
is.
that. And hopefully you believe me.
It kind of is that, because you're taking away a lot of the control from yourself and giving it up to Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like doing that because they like, oh, I like having super clean. I just like my
Well,
cocoa
and they're worried
plugs, or
about what
my
if
cocoa
something goes
plants,
wrong?
and
How would I fix it? If I'm not in control and something goes wrong, then it's just over, isn't it? And that's not the case, obviously, once you get into it and you realize what you're doing with organics. But I feel like
Mhm.
that's the biggest fear that most people have is if something goes wrong in a salt setup, you can change something that day, right now.
Yep. Yep.
and the thing
And
is yeah, like you can do a lot of that stuff with the organic system as well, but you need to do a lot more learning.
Yeah, yeah. It's just not
exactly.
immediately accessible in a bottle, but you can do all the same things.
And you just once you understand the mechanics of it, really, which in this case again goes back to the soil food web, because
Hmm.
the salt is immediately available for root uptake. You're good.
Hmm.
You're golden. You do put down the organic amendments, they're not immediately available. So putting on more isn't going to necessarily solve the issue for you. In a lot of cases, it's more boosting the microbial activity,
Oh,
trying to,
absolutely.
if you're confident that the soil, if the battery still has its charge, um, turn up the microbes and reconnect it. And that will hopefully correct the issue.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
I've been told. Yeah.
Oh,
I
absolutely. A
strongly
compost
suggest to
tea or
everybody, like,
recharge.
yeah, compost tea, recharge, and if you are gonna top dress with your amendments and mix like a cup of worm castings in there too.
Hmm.
Just a little boost, and then those amendments are gonna become more available quicker for the plant to take up whenever it wants.
And two, again, experience and doing a couple runs, if you're familiar with a particular plant, will help you in the long run, because then you'll
Oh
be
yeah.
able to anticipate. That
Hmm.
is where the learning curve comes in. You're not always able to anticipate as well. But if you start with a solid enough base soil, you're probably going to be able to ride it out and get a decent harvest still.
That's exactly it.
Oh,
If you make
absolutely.
sure you start with some rock solid, nutriently dense soil, you're gonna have a huge gap for error there, and it won't be so harsh when something starts to look a little awry. you'll be able to work around it.
And it's not like, dumping the whole bottle of nutrients in there either, because it's a little bit safer for the roots, or I guess the roots, for lack of a better term. You're not going to see a bunch of like wilted curly leaves or burned tips, because it's basically just absorbing it as it pleases versus force
Exactly.
feeding.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. It's
The
just
only
there,
time,
it's ready, and it can eat it whenever it wants. It's like a
Okay.
sandwich you got in the fridge, and whenever you want it, you can smash it.
I mean, you can go overboard a little bit on a top dressing. If you do put a little bit too much amendments on as a top dressing, the top layer of your soil will actually heat up, and you'll be able to stick
Okay.
your finger in there and feel it warming up. And the heating action only can
Mhm.
damage some of the roots. So
Yeah.
you
Okay.
can technically go overboard, but it is
And I
pretty
mean,
hard to do that.
you'd be really pushing it. You'd know you were going overboard at that point, and it's just,
Yeah.
it'd be something you picked up after maybe once or twice of trying to top dress something. And I mean, nobody's gonna overdo it like that, because let's be real, these amendments, they cost money,
Hmm.
and you want to use the right amount anyways, so that you're not overusing a product that you've spent hard-earned money on.
Right.
So nobody's typically overusing it in that matter, I don't think. And luckily, all the heat would be on the top of the soil, kind of away from the root base. So it's still difficult to harm the plant that way, but I've seen it happen. People are
No.
people, and it happens.
Right. People are
Mhm.
people, and this is Leighton Morrison. He loves saying people can be morons because they
Mhm.
keep putting more on. But here's a moron question. Typically with synthetics, it's almost kind of common knowledge. Use half of what they tell you to, and you'll be fine. When it comes to dry amendments, does the same rule apply, or are you really going with the recommendation from the back of the bag, or whatever you're using?
I
To
often go
be
with the
Yeah,
recommendation.
Okay.
Like, just straight up with all the organic stuff, the recommendations are great starter places, and you may find out that you want more or less of one or
a
two
little
of the
bit less or a
ingredients,
little bit more,
you
but
know?
it's a good
But then
starting spot.
it gives you that ability to see, oh, well, that's what everything looks like at this exact ratio. What if I changed how much
Right.
kelp I used? I'm
Okay.
just going to change the kelp this time and see what happens.
And I think that was the magic word right there too, is ratio, all about ratio. You can't,
Mhm.
reduce one here, but leave everything else the same. You have to apply that equally.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or I imagine it is best practice to apply that
Oh,
Yeah,
equally.
otherwise you
absolutely. I
don't know
just
what changed or why. You're just like, I
Yeah.
don't know, I changed everything and everything's different. Well, that's cool, but why?
for instance, I
Right.
just answered a question the other night on Twitch that we got. A guy got a bunch of amendments and wanted to use all of them and mix up 7.5 gallons of soil for a particular
Okay.
plant of his. And like you'll have pounds of these different amendments. So you're like, well, how do I do this and mix them correctly and whatnot? And the easiest way to do it, minus the humic acids, because the humic acids are much stronger. So you take the humic acids out of the equation. You just take a cup of each one of those ingredients, mix that cup into a bowl. So you'll have 7 to 10
Mm,
cups of amendments. Mix them well, and then use 1 cup of that in your
okay.
7.5 gallons.
Nice.
It's also great supply of top dress material too.
Mhm. You're making your own dry amendment blends at that point.
Awesome. And there's no real shelf life to that. Like, you don't have to
No.
use it within 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months.
Yeah, as long
Same
as you
shelf
keep it
life as it
dry,
has when it's dry. Yeah.
Yep.
as long
Okay.
as you keep it
Perfect.
dry and in a cool spot, you're good. Years
Yeah.
down the line.
Awesome.
And that's the easiest way if you're gonna get, let's say the 50 different amendments and do the super soil mix of all the different
It
ones.
saves so
It,
much time.
it saves so much time in math. Is just mix them all together equally and then use a cup or a cup and a half of those amendments to top dress or mix into your soil.
so much easier to take 1 cup of something than like, oh, cup out of this bag, cup out of this bag, cup out of this bag, cup out of
Right.
this.
Or 0.25 cup out of this bag.
Yeah, 1
0.25.
quarter cup, a quarter cup, a quarter cup, a quarter cup.
Yeah, because again, the going with the living soil was something that I kind of stayed away from just because of scale. I wasn't doing a large bed or just a large amount of plants, and to me it makes more sense when doing that. So for little 3-gallon containers in the small tent, it didn't necessarily make sense. So I understand what you mean, mixing that like eighth of a milliliter for this or this or this and that.
You're like, does this even matter at this point?
Yes, it's like
And
negligible.
that's the thing about a lot of the KNF and Jadam recipes too, is like you can make a Jadam liquid fertilizer out of excess leaves that you defoliate out of your garden, and we'll be doing a video on that shortly. But
So,
you only need to use like 1 milliliter per gallon.
oh yeah, that's
So people
nothing.
are like, does this do anything? Yeah, it does, because if you put 2 or 3 milliliters in there, you'll end up burning your plant.
Wow.
Stuff can be crazy strong, man.
It's
Wow.
crazy strong and like immediately available.
Wow.
Yeah,
Because
things that are
they're
immediately
they're
available are
pre-digested.
always dangerous. Anything like in any type of grow, organic growing or salt growing, if it's immediately available, you got to be more careful, man, because it's gonna immediately take that mistake and run with it.
Or take that great amount of nutrients and run with it. It depends on how you played your cards,
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this is like maybe getting too far ahead of the conversation, but exudates, again, that's kind of an important thing for the base of this all. I've heard of doing foliar applications to kind of get different sugars into the leaves, therefore giving the plant excess reserves. Are there things which the excess reserves get sent down as the exudates? Are there things that can be done to maybe like encourage more exudates from the plant?
Believe it or not, even in a vegetative or in a mother's area, giving your plants a little bit of rest from the light. If you're running 24 hours in your veg area or in your cuttings area, experiment
like
with
an
it a
hour or
little
two
bit.
off.
Give them a couple hours off a night. You'll see that they'll produce a lot more exudates. Their root growth will explode. If you're having a hard time getting cuttings on 24 hours of light, try backing it off a little bit, because that's when a lot of the root development happens.
I personally like a 20-hour veg cycle.
Okay, yeah, me too. And that's also too why I've heard that if you're just checking Brix levels that they fall at night, is because that's when the sugar is actually going down, and that again is probably triggered by the photo period.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think it's smart to at least have 4 hours off in the veg, because after all, we are trying to mimic what's going on outside as indoor growers. And the fact of the matter is there's nighttime every night.
Every night, all night.
All night.
Right?
Yeah. Well, okay. And speaking of mimicking outdoors, this is just one thing I'm curious, because sometimes people, the natural tendency is to take things to an extreme. I mean, just look at society. But that said, there's some videos that I see on Instagram or YouTube of super healthy soil, and again, the plants are doing good, so results speak for themselves. But they're like, look at my super healthy soil, and every square inch is moving. Like there's just bugs all over, and they dig in and they have a handful of worms. And it's like, again, yeah, it's cool. It looks healthy, obviously. It's living, obviously, but I have never seen that in nature unless it's underneath a dead body,
Yeah, exactly. That's not normal. And
so is that overdoing it for the sake of overdoing it, or is there a
I
point
would
of
say so personally.
yeah, okay.
Honestly, it is. It's doing it to make, if that's your passion and that's you want to, give your plants everything, give your soil everything, and do that, you're pushing it to to the edge there for
Yeah,
sure.
that's the max. I mean, if you were if you were like trying to push an organic system, that would be it. But I think it's more for it looks good, man. It looks good on camera. It looks
Yep.
fun, and it's an exciting experiment regardless of how it turns out. So
Yeah, and if you're getting good results, again, all power to you. I'm just asking out of curiosity because again, like with light, we know that there is a point of diminishing returns. You can
yes,
always add more light and more light and more light, but at some point, it makes no freaking difference.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
there, so there is sort of a point of diminishing returns.
yeah,
Yeah, once you
Okay.
have more than let's say if you reach into your soil and you grab your soil out and you can count more than 10 worms just from doing that,
Right.
you're going pretty hard.
Okay, that's an excellent guide right there. Excellent rule of thumb. Perfect.
But if you reach your handful and you find no worms, you're probably not going hard enough.
Yep. Okay, cool. That's good because sometimes everybody always talks about Instagram worthy, and I don't buy into it. But a lot of times when that's the example you see, you just think that's how
Like,
it should
oh
be
shit, yeah.
done, right?
Mhm.
That's why all these skateboarding kids can do cool stuff I never could. Damn it! No.
Right.
They're just like, that's just what you do. No.
Because at the end of the
Okay.
day, like having that many worms and that alive of a soil, you're actually feeding that soil quite a bit to keep that going like
Right.
that.
I find it
So
funny
And
though
your
because it's
plant
like
doesn't need it to be going that hard.
organic growing is like the pillar of sustainability, and he's like, nah. Screw that idea. I'm gonna overuse nature and like push the shit out of it.
right, right. Well, I mean, a lot of us, myself, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. Myself, I grow for me, for quality, for medicinal value. Yield is not my top
Main
priority.
concern, yeah.
You always hear about lower yield with a sort of a living food web,
And that's kind of a
living soil
misnomer, but
system.
yeah.
You also hear about like improved quality. So I'm glad you said misnomer because I'm wondering what that really means. What 1 gram is a lower yield? Now I
So
wouldn't miss 1 gram, but
oftentimes what happens, because like we were saying, you want the soil food web rather to have a diverse palette of things to eat. And newer organic growers may not be supplying all the micro and macronutrients to the soil that are necessary to create that yield that they're expecting, or that they might have seen on a previous salt grow that they've done on a
right,
similar
okay,
strain or the same strain. When you get a more experienced organic grower from even more or just an organic farm, you know what I mean? They're yielding the same amount, if not more, because those macros and micros are all available when they need to be available, and the plant can eat as much as it wants.
just
And a
be in
big
tune.
portion of it, yeah, and a big portion of it is, especially for a lot of people that just start into organic, is you just made that soil.
So, yeah, my soil gets better every year.
Our
Like
soil gets better and better every time we
first
use
year
it.
soil is first year
Like
soil,
if
bro.
you just mixed your soil 3 weeks ago, it's going to turn out a really great plant. But as soon as you cut that plant down, maybe plant some cover crop in there or do some amendments and plant some cover crop in there and do another cycle in there, that's when you're going to really start seeing, okay, it grew even faster. It had even stronger branches. It, produced even a little bit more than last time. And once you start really getting that engine going, because once you start soil, you're starting from zero. So, you know,
Yeah, when we look at it
once you
all
build
around the
that soil,
world,
you're
like
going like 10 or 20 miles an hour, which will get your plant to grow, and you'll grow a decent plant. But the second round, you're going 30 or 40. The third round, you're going 50 or 60. And as
Okay.
you work with your soil and continue to feed that soil and build that soil up, you'll achieve 100% speed, and you'll get damn near the same yields or better with great quality from an organic living soil.
yeah, I
Now,
mean,
do you
look at like I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, with all these dense forests and luscious jungles that we have on the
Mhm.
planet, all that soil's been there for freaking hundreds of thousands of millions of years. You know what I mean? It gets better every year, unless we mess it up. Then that's on us. But
Right.
it should get better every year, and that's kind of what you're mimicking indoors with organic soil. Every year, you're reamending, you're doing whatever you have to do to the soil and feeding it, and it's gonna get better every cycle.
Now, in principle, it'd probably be best to leave it in the container so you don't disturb the mycelium
Mhm.
networks. But in practicality, me with my 7 gallons, it would probably make more sense to dump them all onto a tarp and re-amend that way, um, which is going to be destructive to that mycelium network. But do the kind of links to reconnect still exist in that soil and they'll make
Most
it back
certainly.
together?
Oh yeah, they'll
Yeah,
make it back together. And
because you're not
another,
sterilizing that soil when you break all this mycelium down. It's just you're injuring it. You're breaking it down a little
Okay.
bit, right? But mycelium always finds a way to grow back, and as you're adding different fungi to it, and it's introduced to new fungi. Those two fungi are now either competing or working together to dominate a fungal ecosystem.
Okay, because yeah, again, that was if that's not a concern for people using large beds, you just do everything as where it
Mhm.
is. But small home grower, small tents, yeah, it wouldn't. I, I think it would be more effective that way than to try keeping it in the same container and keeping that intact and re-amending and reusing it that way.
You can
So,
definitely get I'd say you can definitely get 2 cycles out of a 7.5 gallon pot just by re-amending it, and
okay,
without having to bust it back out and mix it back into a larger container. But
okay.
yeah, like especially for the smaller home growers, that's definitely not a problem at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially like you said, you got a smaller tent. The plants are probably staying a little smaller. If you're doing
Mhm.
huge plants in a 7 gallon, I mean, that might be a different story, right? Because it's going to take
Right.
more energy out of that battery to make that plant big and strong.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No. Good point. And you're absolutely right. I am keeping them smaller for that reason too, because I want to. I'm trying water only, a couple different water only mixes right
Yeah, I
now.
seen that. Yeah.
So I've
That's
not
exciting.
tried them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be cool. I want to be able to have something I could recommend to a new grower, disabled grower, anybody who needs less
Take this
burden.
bag of soil, take
Yep.
this, and put them together, and you'll get
Yep.
You're
something.
done. Yeah.
Yep, and I like the option too. Is there's a couple super soils uh, that I'm using, and sorry, there distraction.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Um, but the organic ingredients, that
Mhm.
was kind of a cool, important factor to me too, because it's almost temporary cheat code for your year 1 soil.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It is. It
For
is.
real.
Like, if you don't want to mix your own soil, you can get some of these really great water only recipes that are already pre-bagged for you, like the couple of that you showed off, or the Build a Soil,
Mhm.
3.0, or a lot of local companies are starting to make different water only companies.
Same
So
thing with like compost
check
tea
out your
blends. Like
check out your local
if you don't
areas.
if you don't want to make your own compost tea blend, or you're just like that's too much for me, there's a lot of good companies for that make great blends that you can just it's pre-made. You put it right in the water, bubble it up, it's ready to go.
Nice.
So
Then
yeah, there's
that's
definitely a lot of things that a home grower and like even a city grower that lives in
mhm.
a very urban environment, they can still grow organic in a smaller space and not really have access to wildlands like some of us are.
Yeah, New York City. I mean, probably not a whole bunch of 4x4 beds, although I say that and there's probably rooms full. But yeah, I would just be, what do you do with your soil? You reuse it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it don't go anywhere.
And that's
Yeah.
one of the biggest benefits is especially if you plan on growing medicine for yourself and growing medicine for yourself for the foreseeable future. If you switch to a living organic system, there's no more having to take a whole bunch of soil and throw it out back, or haul it to a buddy's spot and throw it in their pit or something. Like, because you're not trying to get rid of a bunch of cocoa or used up peat moss that you used as a growing medium with synthetic nutrients, because it's really, really hard to reuse a growing medium that you've used synthetic nutrients in.
I've tried several times. It doesn't work.
No.
I mean, you can, but you have to rinse out the medium so much, and you're wasting so much water in the process that it's not really.
And then at that point, you're rinsing out you're losing dirt and water. It's very not fun.
And your soil structure too kind of would go to crap, I imagine, at that point as well.
It's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a great chat on the soil food web and why it's really important to keep the soil food web going, and the basics of how the soil food web works and why it's there to keep the nutrient cycling going. It's been really great having you on, Chad. It's always awesome having you on, and
man.
Thank you.
Interesting questions asked, and being able to look at all these different complicated things in different ways, so that people can learn in different ways. Not everybody learns in the same manner, so I really appreciate that.
Absolutely my pleasure. I feel that I walk away smarter every time that we talk, and that's a great feeling and something I'm always happy to do. And kind of like you're saying, it's sometimes you can hear a piece of information, but it doesn't necessarily resonate or click with you.
Mm-hmm.
But then somebody else just changes one or two words in the sentence, and you're like, boom, I've got it. And so I love, again, I love these conversations because I get different perspectives. And there's times where things click, and it's all about that epiphany moment. So many things in life. You prepare yourself, you read the material, you do the studies. It might not make sense, but you have that epiphany moment. It all clicks, and you're off and running. So that's why you always got to try to be learning.
Oh,
even if it doesn't make sense at the moment.
You gotta get smarter every day, right?
Yes.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. Well, once again, I want to thank you for coming by. Shout out Lantern for being on the show as well, asking some really great questions. And
that's right.
Thanks, Green Gang, for coming by and checking out the show, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.
Party on.